Who lives in that utopia where they work? Raise your hand. Right. Because we live in a reality of digital marketing today where we know, obviously, things are moving fast. We live in a world today where we're talking about AI on a regular basis. We're talking about post-pandemic consumer shifts and demands, supply chain disruptions that we're just getting out of, but figuring out our right size way to get back into stock and looking at how we can build demand with the customers today. But what's happening, though, is this lack of organizational strategy that's we've seen through study after study on how companies really aren't good at being agile. Companies are trying it. Companies are, some of them, good at doing it. But what we need to talk about, though, is the gap of companies who are not doing it and how to really build a methodology of being agile. Because agility, I think the laptop battery is a little bit low. So let's be agile and pivot to the plug-in a little bit, okay? So that's what we're going to talk about today. I'll introduce myself first. So I've been in digital marketing for over 20 years. My most recent position, I was the CRO for a small digital marketing agency here in Dallas, who I will rename nameless for personal reasons. Prior to that, I was the vice president of digital marketing for the Army and Air Force Exchange, who are in Dallas, but also global. Obviously, any Army or Air Force base has a retailer called the Exchange, or also the PXBX, if you're familiar with that. I was over their website and digital marketing for about 5 years, and I've also been an adjunct professor for the last almost 9 years. I just moved into full-time academics as of last month, actually. So I'm a full-time professor of marketing at Dallas Baptist University. I also teach at UTD as well and teach marketing analytics. So I want to talk to you today about this art and science of the digital pivot, because to me, it's really important for us to say, look, we're going to learn a lot about this week around strategies about how to do social media, how to do CRM management, how to do any of these tactics. But learning the tactics is only as good as the foundation of digital strategy in your organizations. Who thinks they have a good digital strategy framework in their organization, period, agile or not? Just a solid foundation of planning and execution. A decent one. When I say decent, it works most times than not. Who thinks there's room for opportunity to improve it? It's a hard conversation to have, though, right? Because you have decision makers and executives that you don't want to, necessarily displease. You may be the executive who has that ego, who doesn't want to let go of that ego and lessen that ego a little bit to listen to your teams. Hard conversations. I'm not afraid to talk about it. So let's talk about, though, where we're at as an industry on marketing agility, some very updated surveys and market reports that talk about organizations, people from management level to C-suite, and what they're saying about agility today. Then we're going to look at, after we look at these surveys results, the core reality that we're facing right here in 2024 around this. And then we're going to be introduced to a framework that you can take back with you to your organizations. And this can work for a small company all the way to a large organization, or even you if you're a startup with a very, very small team. And how to put this into action with a case study to it. So professor, case study, a real example of how it works. Let's define digital marketing agility a little bit, though, because a definition of it is really important. When we think agile, we think, okay, flexible, adaptable, going with the flow maybe a little bit. It's more of a foundation of true business practice, but it's hard to start and it's hard to implement. And really the hardest part is sustaining it. Digital marketing agility refers to the ability of a company to swiftly and effectively adapt their digital marketing strategies to be competitive, which a little bit later, we're going to have a great panel session I'm a part of, talking about current trends of how to be competitive in emerging market trends of digital marketing, but being on top of your consumer behaviors, technology advancements, and data insights. So this agility factor, though, that we're talking about that you can implement in your organizations, whether you use this digital pivot framework or any other agile methodology, because there's quite a few out there, by the way. An agile methodology does start with the mindset of IT. Is that only an IT thing? No. It's popular in IT, absolutely, right? Building sprints and iterative testing to implement your technologies. That's not what I'm talking about here. You can do this on the business side of things as well, a very similar thought process. The agility of organizations for us to remain competitive is important, but really it's about getting ahead of the trend, right? We all want to be able to get ahead of the trend. We want to be good at predicting what could occur if we change something in our marketing, the content, the price, the 4 P's of marketing, right? If we do something different with these levers, can we predict a way to increase the trend that's working for us or pivot in a time of need at the right time before we lose that trend we're going down? So Growth is good. Why not grow more? Or decline is bad. How do you sustain the bleeding to get back on track? Let's look at some industry insights. So this is from 2023, not too long ago. This is from a 2023 digital marketing survey conducted by Wellspring Digital Agency. They surveyed a variety of companies, small to large, over 100 plus executives from management level to C-suite. And this is their response to a few questions. Do you have a defined overall marketing strategy? This is 2023 when this was done. It's now 2024. So yeah, 75% said, yes, I have a solid, what I believe my team understands as an overall marketing strategy. Overall marketing together, not just digital marketing, overall marketing, traditional, omni-channel, you name it. 25% though said no, that's a problem. No marketing strategy at all, none. Not even one idea about how to take your business to the next level. That's a gap, okay? The next question after that, though, was, do you have a defined digital marketing strategy, okay? About half said no. So part of their overall marketing strategy, 75% said yes to. Of those 75%, only 50% said they know a good digital marketing strategy they can integrate into it. That's a problem, a really sad problem. So we can say we do marketing, but we don't know how we're going to do it from a digital marketing perspective. We're here at this conference to learn things, right? We want to take nuggets of information back to organization. Tactics. Well, tactics aren't as good as how to roll them up into an overall strategy. So there's a gap there as well. Then they asked the question, has your team been achieving their targeted goals? Marketing in general. Okay, looks better. So if you look at the yellow line, about 40% said meeting goals all the way to exceeding goals, okay? But there's still a good 25% that are unsure or underperforming to their goals. Okay, reality is business is business. Not every industry is going to thrive post-pandemic as others. Not every industry, every company is going to beat their competition and be number one. We know that. There's still an opportunity here. So why do I present this first? Is because you cannot do agile marketing if you don't have a foundation of digital marketing strategy. Simple as that. Agile marketing is a practice. It's a methodology. Think about it this way, sports analogy. If you don't have the best players on your football team to play the game and a solid playbook as a starting place to play the game, how are you going to do an audible? How are you going to change halfway through and halftime, talk to your team about pivoting your plays to now get back on track to win the game if you don't have a solid playbook up front? So it starts with that. Everything I'm going to talk about after this is if you don't have that intact, please don't even try to implement agile marketing because you need a foundation first. So it's very important. I create awareness to this because we still live in this utopia mindset that, oh, everything's fine in some of our organizations. We know how to make decisions. We know how to build a long-term plan and actually execute to that plan. The reality is some companies still don't, and that's a gap. But we're going to take it a step further. Once we know we need to integrate our overall digital marketing strategy into our overall organizational strategy, then we can build some agile marketing. So to be agile, to be able to pivot, you need a foundation of strategy to build upon. Knowing the simple things like who's our target audience, what does our campaign structure look like, what are we going after? Is it sales? Is it profit? Is it top line sales? Is it acquisition? Is it retention? What are our KPIs we're going after? Now let's talk about agile marketing. This is from recently, very recently here in 2024, the State of Agile Marketing Report from agilesherpas.com. Great website, by the way. They have a lot more resources in agile marketing if you want to check it out. How many of your marketing teams are using agile marketing today? So more than half seem to be using it. Great. Another half are not. There's this fear factor I think we have in organizations to change our organizational structure, methodology, department, etc. How many of you today feel like if you were to say, go back to your organization and say, look, we need to do things differently here in the middle of the summer, it might be kind of hard, right? Who's in the middle of their budget season, by the way? Developing budgets for the next fiscal year. Kind of interesting to do that in the summer, right? I always worked in the retail industry where it was like budgets in the fall to start in February for the following year. So we were looking at budgets in a couple months. For you looking at that budget time though, what are you building your budgets around? It should be goals, right? Strategies. Well, okay. How can you look at a next year goal or KPI, call it sales, revenue, profit, customer acquisition, whatever that is, if you don't know how you're going to get there? How many of you do the bottoms down kind of or top down kind of thing? The goals are given to you and then your teams have to execute to that. It's a pain in the, well, you know what? We're not going to cuss today. I think that's the whole point. I've been there, done that. Now, who has bottoms up? Actually, where the departments come together, they talk about what we can do and serve up potential goals that the overall executive team will say, okay, I listen to my bottom line teams, and I'm actually going to do this roll up mentality. Who has that mentality in their organization? It would be nice, right? Who believes this finance runs all the decision making when it comes to the budget? Yeah. Wouldn't it be nice to listen to your marketers a little bit on how they're going to drive that demand and actually how to drive more demand than they expect? Well, it starts out with a framework of how to be possibly agile to get there. Now, to what extent do you plan to transition additional marketing teams to agile? So they were asking their respondents here in the survey, well, are you going to move in the new direction this next year? How many of your teams in marketing are you going to move in that direction? Now, the question's a little open-ended because you could have marketing split up a little bit, right? Not all marketing works together. There's still silos in marketing, which I find crazy. You can't do this if all marketing's not working together. So PR people, please work with your digital marketing social media team. Your digital strategists, please work with your creative team on strategy. Don't just tell them what to create, tell them why they're creating it, and maybe to give them an idea about how they can be inclusive into that decision making. That's part of it. 61% plan to transition some of their marketing teams. 25% will plan to transition all of their marketing teams to agile, and 14% will not transition at all. So this means that some companies are still on the fence. I'm going to do it, I'm not going to do it, etc. Now, what impact, if any, factors has your organization's use of agile marketing done? Like, why are we doing this? Why are we moving to an agile methodology? Well, competitive landscape. Our competitors, we know in digital marketing, move fast, but it'd be nice to move faster than them, be a step ahead, right? Next, economic climate. We are obviously in a very interesting economic climate the last couple of years. Inflation is a real thing. Scarcity is a tactic that we can use in marketing to drive demand, but if the inventory is not available, we have nothing to sell. If we have poor service, but we're creating demand for that poor service, we're not doing anything right by the new prices that we're taking to our customers. So it's all these factors of the economic climate we're in and the uncertainty where it's going. We kind of feel like maybe in 2024, inflation's kind of tapered off a little bit, but it's not going to stop. Some industries are still impacting consumers' wallets quite a bit with inflation, so we'll see where we go. The election's coming up, and what happens during the election time? It's an economic uncertainty depending on who's elected. Now, the marketing budget's a big part of this. You know, the last speaker talked about budgets quite a little bit too. Very important. Ad spend, critical here. Do you have the budget to do this or not? You need a buffer in your budget. Work with your finance team on a budget, a contingency budget for agile marketing. If you don't, you can't be agile. You know, it's where to spend less or spend more or infuse more. It's part of the conversation. And then the emergence of AI. I mean, obviously, the tactics, okay, of AI are part of this. We need to figure out where does AI fit into our overall strategy and how to pivot when we learn this new technology. Because learning the technology, but waiting 6 months later to implement something with it is a problem. Agile marketing should allow us to say we've learned something new at a conference like this, or on the job, or through another type of training, and then implement something right then and there. Not waiting 6 months for that budget or that decision maker to say, well, let the quarter be over and then implement that strategy. So agile marketing has been emerging over the last few years, but still is an opportunity for maturity and advancements in organizations as an actual business practice and not just a one-off occurrence. Not just a one-time campaign that we did on the side, not just we pivoted once during a decline in our business. It's an actual look. I actually knew when to pivot more often than just 1 or 2 times in the fiscal year. I did it as many times as I needed to because I had the support from the organization. I had the technology to be able to do it and the acumen to be able to be flexible and adaptable to it. So the core reality is that, you know, obviously memes, we like these, right? What if I told you that agile is actually a mindset? It's a mindset. It's a cultural mindset. So this is organizational behavior type stuff, okay? Who took an org behavior class in college or theory, right? This is where we're at. Now, this isn't theory though, this is reality, okay? When we talk about theory, it's all about what we could do. What this is maybe what we should do is the reality. So building the culture is the first step. Then we'll get into the framework that I've got laid out for you on maybe how to take this back and bring a version of it to your organization. Embrace agility first. Talk about what it even is. Have advocates, have people who understand it in the team to talk about it. Now, it's great to have your leadership be the stewards of it, your leadership team to actually be the ones to embrace it and say, yeah, we'll set aside a budget for agility. We'll actually monitor real-time performance and talk about how we need to pivot that campaign into a new direction versus waiting for the results. We'll talk about how analytics is important. We're actually going to use data to drive decisions, which is up here as well. You know, data-driven decisions, we talk about it all the time. How many of those are we actually using for decisions? And in fact, I wrote a blog about it, doctorofdigitalstrategy.com. Feel free to read it. I'd propose that we talk about metric-driven decisions, because data is just the data. It's the metrics that we're evaluating in the performance. So know your KPIs, know what you're actually measuring to get to that point. Identify emerging trends, which is, again, great at 1:30. We're going to have a panel about that. Know what's happening around you in your industry, what your competitors doing, what your customers doing. It makes sense. We always talk about that, but how do you do it in a real-time aspect? How do you do it and say, look, I'm going to do something different now versus waiting later to make it happen? This is where you can foster a culture of innovation. Make sure your company thrives on innovation. If you're not going to be competitive. Simple as that. If you don't have a culture of innovation, you will not be competitive in digital marketing today or the next however many years, because you have to continuously innovate. That's part of agility. And then all that should enhance the customer experience. So the digital pivot framework, obviously it's playing off. We had a good one earlier today. I love these acronym type frameworks. Pivot, perceive the need, investigate and analyze, visualize solutions, optimize and execute, and transform and thrive. A 5-step process, excuse me. Now, yes, it's cliche. We're doing it off an acronym, but it actually makes sense. Let's talk about this a little more. I'll put this into a case study. Now, I worked with a company at one of the companies I just talked about, selling their brand on our website, our European brand. Now, I don't have permission to use their logo because they're going through some kind of logo thing right now. So Parity Audio, a full-service, up-and-coming European brand of audio equipment, launched in 2017. You know, audio is saturated. It is. Audio products, if you go on Amazon, just type in headphone, you already know you're going to get the big players like Bose, Apple, and Beats is part of Apple, of course, and all the other players. And then you have all these kind of OEM, tertiary brands that are out there. Well, they were kind of trying to compete with all that, but they had a very strong European following. But then we're trying to tap into the US in 2017, pre-pandemic. They started doing okay. So the casual listener, their targeted market was the everyday person listening. Well, maybe they're working out, hanging out, whatever. They weren't really looking at many targeted audiences beyond just casual listening for fun. Well, they had a problem. As the pandemic hit, less people were being casual, if you take that, right? Not getting out in public, not going around. And Europeans are very active, area. A lot of people out and about, riding their bikes. I just got back from a European vacation. First time to Europe, loved it. People are outdoors. I mean, we can't be outdoors here in Dallas very much, both too hot. But riding bikes, jogging. I mean, everywhere I went, I was like, wow, people are actually outside, living life. Love it. Listening to their audio. Well, 2021 obviously was not a year for that. 2020 to 2021, no one's going outside very much. So they saw a decline in sales, like a lot of businesses did. Not a new news story around that. But they had to pivot. So we worked on this methodology together. We talked about, all right, what can we do to talk to those soldiers who live in areas where the weather is still okay, but also, what are they doing, though? Some of these are veterans, by the way, too, not just active soldiers. Veterans who have jobs in all kinds of industries. A lot of people started working from home, obviously. Remote work started to increase a lot. So they looked at, well, where's our audience at? We need to pivot to where they're at. So they looked at, all right, let's redefine our revenue stream, diversify it. We'll still target active, fitness people. We'll still target the casual listener. But let's talk about how our audio is really good for meetings. Let's talk about how our audio is really good for listening to music while you're working even. So we would look at diversify your revenue streams with more online content, by the way, too. They're really focused on brick and mortar. But now they switched to online, which a lot of companies have both channels, but are still trying to figure out how to pivot to even online. That was one thing. But their biggest thing was looking at their customer behavior, the changes. People listen to music more during the day while they're at work, working remotely, than they probably do in their leisure time in the evening. The hours they studied that someone was listening to their headphones or speakers or whatever, because of meetings as well, were 5 hours a day on average versus the casual hour and a half to 2 hours a day in the evening. Wow, a lot more usage. That data showed the opportunity to target this audience for daytime listening during working hours. So eye chart, I get it. But I like to write a lot, so you can take this back with you later and read it. But I'll just talk about this at a very high level. One, perceive the need. The perception is, the need is we need to pivot because our audience is now into this new working environment, being remote. Millions of people are now in this environment. Way more untapped audience than we talked about too before. So if you look at their challenge, though, it's how to adapt to this purchasing habit behavior. How do I still market myself against all these other competitors on audio? Well, a lot of people still needed at-home equipment, right? They focused on a lot of first early adopters, people who wanted to buy new equipment for their home. They targeted these people. They understood how to get to these people through some paid advertising as well, through some social media, and offering some pretty aggressive discounts because of it. But that worked for them. And then, so you have an art and science to each one of these steps, by the way. The art is understanding the market dynamics. They understood it, and then they identified triggers for pivoting. This is the hard part for organizations, though, sometimes, is where's the trigger to pivot? How do I know what to pivot on? They knew it was on who they're talking to and how they're talking about the product. Same product, but the features they were offering would be served for a different purpose now based on their analytics of the usage. Step 2, investigate and analyze. So analytics, pretty straightforward. But here, though, the art is creative problem solving. You need to be the one to understand what the core problem is you're trying to solve. It's not going to be deliberately given to you all the time. Sales is the problem. Acquisition is the problem. Whatever KPI is the problem. What is the problem with your marketing? You have to identify that. Customers are going to tell that to you. You have to identify that. So how do you do it? Look at what's been going on. Look at past campaigns, what's worked and what hasn't. They launched a new campaign. The solution was Hear the Difference campaign. Hear the Difference campaign launched, and they actually were able to talk to customers about how the quality of the audio was for the meetings, how they could use their speakers and also the microphones in them to enhance, meetings at home. The Hear the Difference campaign really launched a whole new way they marketed beyond just value and price, and active listening versus actual productivity listening. Right, there's two different things. Active listening is more of that casual, where productivity listening is maybe it's on in the background. Maybe it's that motivational music to keep you going. That's what this is about. So they changed their mindset from active listeners to productive listeners. There's two different types of customers there they talk to. And that's where the audio insights came in. And they showed a really strong increase in engagement around that campaign as well. And 3, visualize solutions. You have to visualize it. In strategy, you take a strategy class in college, or you're talking about strategy, visualize the results, meaning that you don't know yet, but they ran their campaigns. Over time, though, they would see what worked and what didn't. They would do their A/B testing, of course. They would run their, marketing campaigns for a short window of time and test, measure, and learn. That's hard for some companies to understand how to do, right? If you're so focused on results but not looking at real-time performance, the patience level has got to be there, okay? Organizations want immediate gratification sometimes. Yes, it's good to win and win big, fast. We want that. But this is not something you can just do overnight sometimes. Overnight campaigns is not the norm in digital marketing. It is not. Viral marketing is not the savior when you're in a decline in business. It's incremental gains, yards to the touchdown, right? That's what they understood here in this visualizing solutions. Incremental gains towards big wins over time. The strategy they used was that personalized marketing, really focused on talking to their audiences around who responded back to their initial impressions of campaigns, following up with some good customer journey building. So they're using tactics we knew about. We know about these tactics of customer journey building, but it was the framework and philosophy, the culture that allowed them to get better at it. That's what we're talking about today. It's not about how to do customer journey building. It's about the framework on, are you actually going to do it correctly? Customer journey building is not a set it and forget it type of technology or practice. It is an agile process. We have to be good at knowing when's the right time to monitor performance and pivot on the right trigger. The trigger of that event that we're doing in customer journey building or automation is all based on what we're assessing at that point in time. Optimize and execute. So at this point now, it's about your strategic planning. You have a DNA now of being agile in your organization. They built that into their first year. Some companies, it may take more than a few cycles to do this, of fiscal cycles. It might, because you actually understood, wow, it paid off. The results worked. Here they realized with just a few business quarters, every 3 months, they would assess results and realize, yeah, this iterative process really does work. We're taking our time to implement something, test it, and then look at real-time performance and then pivot at the right time. And at the end of the day, what they were able to do was pay off in their results. Get straight to the success, transform and thrive. You're transforming yourself as an organization. We talk about digital transformation. It's not just getting the technology. And no offense to any software providers here, you are a big part of that. It's what we're doing with that technology. I don't care if you're Salesforce, Adobe, or the smallest software company out there. If you're not partnering with your clients or your customers on how to make them a transformative business, you're not being agile and you're not being strategic, okay? The tools are great. AI is great. We're going to have conversations later today around ChatGPT. Great. But you have to make it part of your DNA as a strategic plan. You have to be able to understand what works and what doesn't and pivot at the right time. Because the longer you wait to pivot, your customers are going to go somewhere else. You're going to lose to somebody else as well. Oh, and the results, they actually increased over that annual time period, year over year. It's not going back. There it is. They saw a 10% increase in sales in the first year. And their conversion rate on their website went from 2% to 7% on the website I worked on with their specific products, okay? Very big increase in conversion by being tailored and targeted, but going beyond just saying that the automation is going to do it for me. I'm going to be agile along the way to look at the performance and then pivot at the right time through iterative testing. So there's challenges though, and that's understood. Every company is going to have a set of barriers to get to this transformational point, okay? And in fact, I argue don't invest into that technology until you know your company can be agile to actually use it. Maybe as you're developing it with IT, build your business practice at the same time. So identify potential roadblocks. Know where those roadblocks are. Is it decision-making points? You know, do we have to give up some rights of decision-making as an executive to the lower level? It's hard, right? I've been a VP. I've been in the C-suite. I have to give up some of my decision-making rights at the lower levels because iterative testing is day to day, week to week. I can't monitor every campaign all day long. I have to put some trust into my teams. Okay. Next, or other roadblocks. There could be a plenty. Budget, time, technology itself. Figure those out and have those understood. Develop a comprehensive pivot plan. It's kind of weird saying pivot plan. We have a plan, and then we're going to figure out how to pivot in the moment. Not really. You have a plan B, C, and D, right? Usually, right? Have those as your backup. Have those tricks of the trade in your back pocket. You may not need them, but have them anyways. How many of you have developed a marketing campaign idea and you have for your executives option A, B, or C, and your executives pick B? Okay, they like it. It's because it's most cost effective, the best results. But A and C are still tangible. Well, B didn't work out so well, CMO. So let's go with option A now and do it now versus waiting for the results to marinate when we know the trend's going in the wrong direction. And have that conversation and be open-minded as the executive making that decision with it. Have a pivot plan, which means options. Foster organizational alignment. Now, this is really hard. The hardest one, I think, of all of them. The marketing team will be all about it. Your CMO, VP of marketing, lower level employees are all going to be like, yeah, we're agile. We know how to pivot. We know how to be at the right time and right place for our customers. That's what we talk about in marketing. Right time, right place, right price, maybe. But other departments don't get it. Supply chain's like, well, I only have a linear plan to get my supply to the customer. You know, shipping only happens so often. Okay, well, have contingency supply just in case. Finance is like, well, you already have a budget for the year. Well, okay, we should have planned for that contingency fund earlier because I knew I would need that money. If I don't spend that contingency money, great, I'm still profitable at the end of the day. But I need it for that perspective. And there's other departments with other dynamics. Embrace it. Be flexible. Now, it doesn't mean just go wild, wild west and crazy here. It means make calculated risks. Make tests worth it. Don't do a test just because you want to kind of learn something. No, you want to learn something of tangible value, okay? Not just because the button's black versus blue. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about value proposition. We're talking about new audiences. We're talking about new feature sets we want to market, new prices we really, really want to try out, the bigger, deeper type of agile marketing, not the small stuff. Make these impactful tests and learning. Communicate effectively, pretty straightforward. Make sure everybody knows what you're doing, how you're doing it, and communicating at the right time, right place with those stakeholders who made the decisions on when to pivot, and measure and optimize and continuously optimize. You know, don't get stuck in your ways. Now, obviously, if something's not broke, they say don't fix it. But I say if it's not broke, you can always make it better. You can augment and strengthen what you've done. I'll leave you with a quote from Charles Darwin: adaptability is the key to survival. We get digital marketing moves fast, things change, but you have to have a framework to do it. This pivot framework is one way of doing it, one way to kind of build that into a philosophy in your organizational culture. Find what works for you. Find what works for you based on your size of business, the type of customers you have, the type of products you offer. But if you don't do something, you're not going to survive. So with that, thank you. Connect with me on LinkedIn or my website. I've got some books out there, got more books on the horizon about all this kind of stuff. So feel free to connect. Happy to provide any more feedback at that point. I just finished right at the 1 second mark. So that's never done that before. As a professor, I'm either below time or over time, right? So Any questions about this at all? Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate it.